Hello everyone, Carnasa here, and welcome back to Coming Home Redux. Now, the title of this episode is going to be Gateway 5, because I want to go to Gateway, and I want to land on every single moon around that gas giant. Well, not even technically a gas giant, we can land on Gateway, and we are going to be doing that as well, so theoretically this would be the Gateway 6. We're not returning from any of the moons, but we are going to hopefully land on every single one of them. So what we're working on at the beginning of this episode is a ginormous relay antenna structure that we are going to have as kind of the bulk, the main section of our spacecraft. I've tweak scaled those relay antenna up, and I have done a little bit of a test in HyperEdit, and as far as I'm aware, it does work. We should be able to get constant communication with Rode from Gateway, which will be very nice. Because I do need those relay antenna, because I don't want to pack huge antenna on each lander that I want to send over. So we did unlock nuclear propulsion in the last episode as well. So we are going to be grabbing 3 of those nervers, and that is going to be the way that we are going to get over to Gateway. I don't know why I've done this to myself, because it's going to take a really long time to burn through all of that liquid hydrogen to get us out there. But apparently, as I've said before, I am a little bit of a masochist, so I enjoy inflicting pain on myself in this series, and obviously I filmed this already. The burn to get over to Gateway did take a very long time, but that is basically the main mission all constructed. We are going to do it in 2 separate launches. What I'm going to do now is create a new craft file and work on the probes that I'm going to be sending down. So 4 of Gateway's moons have no atmosphere, so we are going to be working on these vacuum probes that are going to rely on a propulsive landing. However, Gateway itself has an atmosphere, obviously, and the other moon, I can't remember what its name is, Comb also has an atmosphere. It's essentially like Lathe from stock KSP. So we are going to be designing these 2 atmospheric landers as well, and they're not going to rely on engines to land. They are just going to use a parachute. We're going to whack a heat shield on them and hope we don't come screaming in too fast that it is going to blow everything up. So for the Comb lander, I'm just going to go for 1 heat shield. But for Gateway, I have packed 3 heat shields on because obviously it is very large. We're going to be coming in at something like 12,000 meters per second. I fully anticipate on burning through several heat shields. Now, there is something a little bit strange about this that will happen later on, and it still confuses me now. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but we will see that when we get to it. Anyway, we have now pretty much finished working on the atmospheric lander. We're just going to whack a little fuel tank and a tiny engine so we can do a few maneuvers around Gateway and ensure that we are going to be coming screaming into either the atmosphere of Gateway or Comb. So with that being done, I did save those as sub-assemblies. We're going to come back to the main Gateway mission and place them on these radial decouplers. So 4 of the vacuum landers and 2 of the atmospheric landers, but the atmospheric ones are ever so slightly different. Obviously, this is going to mess up my center of mass and all of that, but it shouldn't be too bad with 3 of those nerve engines on the bottom, providing basically all of the power for this mission. So in order to launch this, I have redesigned the Paladin 1, and it should now hopefully be reusable. And this is something else that I'm going to be doing, is I am going to attempt to use ascent guidance, but I have changed it on recommendation to PVG, which is the method of ascent guidance, it's prime vector guidance, which you use in RSS and RO. However, as we can see, we are just going straight up and then we flip, and I'm not entirely sure why that's done that, but apparently PVG isn't working for me at the moment. So we're going to relaunch this in my tried and tested way, just using smart ASS to get us into a nice orbit. It's not too bad doing this. It does mean I have to pay attention the entire time, but it's not really, it's not difficult or anything like that. So I'm quite happy doing this for the remainder of the series, launching things manually, and hopefully later on in the series anyway, we will get to a point where I am not really launching much from Rode at all. In the last Coming Home, by the last few episodes that I did, I wasn't launching anything from Rode in the series because we were assembling everything in low Rode orbit around a space station that was capable of building stuff in orbit. That is something that I do want to do very soon. Very, very soon, because I'm starting to get to the point where I think that is going to be feasible in the tech tree, and that's going to be awesome. And one thing about these episodes, that was a bit of a shame. The probe blew up when we deployed the fairing, so we are going to try this for a third time. Honestly, third time's the charm, eh? Hopefully this time it will work. I don't know why that happened, because I did set the ejection to 100%, so it should have blasted those fairings away, but apparently not. And I'm going to skip through this launch quite quickly, because obviously we've seen it twice already. Anyway, before that fairing happened, I was rudely interrupted by that. I was going to say, one thing that I'm trying to do with this series at the moment is one episode is going to be focused on sending probes and unmanned stuff somewhere, and then the next episode will be focusing on sending crewed missions, and that is kind of the theme that I'm going with at the moment. Although, to be fair, after finishing this episode, probe missions aren't going to be that exciting. I suppose I can do rovers and stuff. We've only sent landers over to Gateway, but the Gateway 5/6, if you want to call it the 6, that's pretty much the best we're going to get out of probes. And then I guess it does come down to sending crew over Interplanetary, which is something I do want to be doing first. But I think the next crewed episode, which will be the next one, is more likely going to be setting up a surface base on Ash. At least that's what I've got in my head at the moment. That's what I want to do. Anyway, we have managed to get this into orbit, and I've set it to about a 400,000 meter orbit. That way it'll be easy to rendezvous with the propulsion stage later on. So we are going to come back to the first stage of the Paladin 1 and attempt to land this. Unfortunately, we didn't really get too far with this, so we are going to come down in the ocean. And I fired up the engine a little bit too late, and unfortunately we lost that first stage booster. But now what we're going to do is we are going to be launching the propulsive stage, which is going to be the stage that has all of the liquid fuel and the 3 nerve engines. There we go. We have had booster separation on the rocket, and we have had the first stage separation happen too. So I'm breezing through this launch because this is a Barbarian 1 launch vehicle. I showed a launch of this in the last episode. It's something we've seen before. I want to get to the good stuff. I want to get to Gateway, but we have made our way up to orbit. So one thing that I changed about this was I put probe cores and parachutes on the solid rocket boosters. However, every time I came back with FMRS, well, this happened. So I did it more times than this. I think I did it 5 times in the end. But yes, unfortunately, every time I went to it, all 4 boosters crashed into each other, which obviously is less than ideal. So we weren't able to recover those solid rocket boosters. But what we're going to do is we are going to try and recover the first stage of this now. And in the last episode, we came down and we hit the ground at about 7 meters per second, and that was too much and it caused it to break. This time I thought I'd try using landing guidance, because in the last Coming Home series, someone told me that you get a really good landing with that. But as we can see, it was just messing up, so I decided to try myself by the time we got to the ground. And once again, unfortunately, I came down a little bit too hard. So what we're going to be doing now is a quick inclination change so that we are aligned with the target. And this is something that I didn't realize, but the eagle-eyed among you might know from now, to do with my target. Well, yeah, we're plotting out our maneuver to there. We've changed our inclination because it was quite out of the way. And this should have been a warning sign for what's about to happen anyway, that the inclination was so different. I literally launched these 2 missions back to back, so they should have been in a roughly similar inclination, but there we are. Here we go, approaching the target, and unfortunately, it's the wrong thing. It's the space station. So here's my thoughts on that. Oh my god, I can't believe I've done that. Oh no, that's not the Gateway mission, that's the space station. That's mildly infuriating. I'll have to launch this again. So we're not going to launch that again. We are just going to, well, I did, but I've just skipped ahead to the actual rendezvous with the Gateway mission. But I thought I'd include what I was saying when I did that, because I was so frustrated. That is such a silly mistake to make. I really should have checked what I was rendezvousing with. But eventually, we do make our way up to the main section of the Gateway mission with all of those antennas on, all of those landers, and it is just a little bit of a quick docking mover. maneuver. God, my words today are really bad. Before we managed to dock to this, and I used the docking camera on the docking port. Someone recommended that as well. And that was actually really useful because it tells you your relative velocities in which direction you're going, and I never realized that, and that made it really easy to slow down to a complete standstill and dock with the target quite nicely. But anyway, now that we have docked those, it is time to begin our burn, which, I mean, I have done already. And once again, Principia is just absolutely mental for this. Going to Gateway caused Principia to basically have a heart attack, like all of the squiggly lines all over the place. It was insane. But this was a really long burn, and I did do it all in one go, which is something I probably shouldn't have done. I should have done multiple passes around road to make this a bit more manageable. But anyway, despite that, we were able to get an encounter with Gateway, although I do have to fine-tune it a little bit. And to be honest, the only reason why I'm fine-tuning this like this is so that when I arrive at Gateway, our inclination is going to be roughly the same as at least one of the moons around the planet. That way, I don't have to perform a very costly inclination change once we arrive, and there's also the added benefit of if we can get a flyby of one of those moons, well, we can use a bit of a gravity assist, and hopefully that should get us into a very nice Gateway orbit. But now with that maneuver fine-tuned, it's going to be a while for the people in mission control for us to get to Gateway. So what better for them to do than either go to YouTube to check out their favourite YouTuber, or head on over to Reddit to browse Kerbal's finest newspaper, The Weekly Kerman. The Weekly Kerman is a subreddit devoted to goings-on in the KSP world, formatted in the style of a newspaper, containing articles about all things Kerbal space program. So, if you want to read up about cursed planes, catastrophic crashes, or even the existence of aliens, head on over to The Weekly Kerman and check it out. Now including an RSS segment. After having read several editions of the Weekly Kerman, we have now made our way over to Gateway, and it's a bit of a screenshot opportunity. I think that's going to be the thumbnail for this episode. I'm not 100% decided yet, but I'm fairly sure that is going to be. I do want to say about the Weekly Kerman as well. That's not a paid promotion or anything. Someone sent me a message asking me to help them out, and I thought, yeah, why not? It's Kerbal Space Program related, so why not? Anyway, we are at Gateway, and we are firing up those 3 nerve stages. And what we're going to do is we're going to capture it into a highly elliptical orbit to begin with, because obviously we don't need to expend as much delta V with that kind of orbit. And that way I can leave my periaps around Gateway quite low so that we can ditch the Gateway probe and send it, hopefully, screaming into that atmosphere where we will get lots and lots of scientific data. There we go. We have decoupled the probe. We're going to run the magnetometer report because for some reason I decided that all of the magnetometers were going to be pointing inwards against the structure of Gateway 1. Yeah, that was a bit of a dumb move, but still, we were able to get magnetometer reports from Space High once we decoupled this. We changed our periaps a little bit down to about 210,000. The Gateway atmosphere, the atmosphere of Gateway starts at about 380,000 or there, so I believe. So 210,000 should be more than enough to slow us down and hopefully capture and land in our first pass. And hopefully, it won't blow our spacecraft up. So we can see the heat shields now are heating up, and we are running out of ablator very, very, very fast. There we go, we're starting to get some of those visual effects of re-entry. But any minute now, we are going to completely run out of ablator. However, the heat shield remains intact. It doesn't break, it doesn't overheat, and it's still providing adequate protection. So I thought, have I got heating turned down? Nope. Check the settings, all good. And then I went into the cheat menu. Have I got ignore max temperature on? No. This is just somehow able to survive the re-entry of Gateway. And this was what I was talking about earlier on that got me really confused. I have no idea how this happened because it should have been burnt to a crisp. We are going very fast, and that heat shield has run out of ablator. But I'm going to accept it. So one reason why I also checked ignore max temperature is because I have had to keep that cheat on. A couple of episodes ago, I did mention that my probes kept randomly blowing up in space if I time warp too fast. And essentially what is happening, and I don't know why this is happening, but all of the parts are getting heated up to about 5,000 Kelvin for a split second, which obviously is enough to blow everything up, which, yeah, so I turned that cheat on to avoid that from happening. But I do turn that cheat off when I am performing a re-entry, like with Gateway there, just so you know that I'm not trying to cheat through the re-entry process. I do have to put heat shields on and all of that kind of stuff in order to keep my craft alive. But yes, we did splash down on Gateway, and we did get a rather large amount of science from that splashdown, which is very nice. And that is one thing later on in this series, I might return to Gateway and send a boat or something like that, because obviously it's got a giant ocean on it, and it'd be really cool to sail around in style on the oceans of Gateway. I know Lynx did a submarine that he sent quite far down into Gateway's depths, but I feel like a boat would be a cool idea. But anyway, we have now landed on Gateway, so it's time to start landing on all of the different moons. So the first one we're going to go for is going to be Comb, and the reason why is, well, we found an encounter pretty quickly, and it's got an atmosphere, so all I really need to do is point myself far enough in the atmosphere that hopefully it will slow us down and we can capture and land. That's the idea anyway. And obviously not too far down that we are going to blow up and hit the ground a little bit too hard. There we go, we have decoupled the lander now. We do lose all 3 of the landing legs on this, unfortunately. And we do run out of communication as well. So this is something very, very bizarre that's been happening. I don't think I should be out of communications range. However, as soon as I swapped craft in the tracking station and come back to it, we could never regain a connection to this main relay. If I was to swap to the lander probe and land it and not bother swapping back, then we would always have connection. It's something really bizarre, and I don't know if I've got some sort of setting that I've ticked that relay networks are a bit useless. But it was really strange, and actually, by the end of this Gateway mission, we do lose out on a lot of science because I can't transmit from the surface of the moons, or at least 3 of the moons. A bit unfortunate, but I don't know what was going on there. Anyway, we were completely successful in landing on Comb. Despite losing 3 of those legs, we still came down and touched down rather softly. So yeah, this is me seeing, like, I've got a connection with these 2. I'll go back, and it kind of landed funny. But where's the connection gone? It's just vanished and we can't do anything. I don't know what's going on. Seriously, there was a green line in the tracking station, but yet when we get to the actual mission, it says no. So we have done, yeah, we're all done around Comb now. I swear, we're not going back to that moon until maybe later on in the series. But what we're going to do now is we are going to try and land on Proxim, which is the closest moon to Gateway. So this is me having not swapped out of this probe, and we can still see we've still got communication, even though we're probably quite far away from the main orbiter relay satellite thing. Now, I'm getting very frustrated remembering about this, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, no, we still got communication. It was really bizarre, really, really bizarre. And we probably lost about over 1,000 science, I reckon, from that. Anyway, we have managed to get ourselves an encounter with Proxim. I thought this was going to be quite difficult to do, because obviously it's called Proxim, and I'm assuming it's called Proxim due to its proximity to Gateway. Yeah, it's the closest moon and it is quite small, so I thought capturing in this low orbit would be quite difficult. However, with a couple of passes of Comb, we were able to get our orbit relatively low down, and that meant that it was only going to take about 1,000 meters per second of delta V to capture into a Comb orbit, which we are, not a Comb, Proxim orbit, which we are more than capable of doing. And because of that, well, it's just a quick 200-300 meters per second burn to land on the surface, which we can do there. It was a bit of a rough landing because we did lose connection once we got out of sight of the main orbiter, but we are able to reconnect later on and transmit a bit of data from the surface of Proxim. So with that being done, we have now successfully landed on 2 of Gateway's moons. That means there are 3 to go. And I didn't know anything about the moons until I got here. I'd never seen them in the past coming home. This is the first time I've been to Gateway. Never landed on them, not even looked up Delta V maps. So I thought, well, Proxim was relatively easy to land on. Are they all going to be like that? So this next one we're going to, Ansia, is going to be exactly the same. It's got a bit more of an inclined orbit, which makes it a little bit harder to get to. But I don't know what was going on, but I think with all of the flybys of all of the moons, it was relatively easy to get to every single one of these moons. And they were obviously all providing slight gravity assist, so I basically worked my way from the center of Gateway outwards. So this is the third furthest moon from Gateway, and then it's Jade is the furthest, and Jade is a very, very, very large moon. I imagine Jade is a little bit like Tylo from stock. I don't think it is as big as Tylo, but it's verging on that. And it was lucky that I packed these landers with 3,500 meters per second of delta V, because if I didn't, well, the landing on Jade would have gone very, very badly. But we can see we have now bounced on Ansia. We once again didn't have communications, so we were unable to transmit any science from the surface, and it also meant that I had no fine control when coming down to land. So this is the fourth of Gateway's moons, Idos, and it's roughly in the same plane as every other moon other than Ansia. And it's also quite a small moon, so once again, it's relatively easy to land on. The delta V requirements for actually performing a landing are very, very minuscule. So I changed to the main orbiter there, the main Gateway 1 mission, because I wanted to run a few scientific experiments as we flew past, and because I changed back to this, well, we lost connection. Really, really annoying. But the reason why I changed to the Gateway 1 mission is these small probes, I forgot to put batteries on them. So the only electric charge capability they have is the batteries on the probe core and the 6 solar panels that are around the side. That is not enough, being all the way over at Gateway, to actually transmit all the data that I want. I can transmit telemetry, I can transmit thermometer and barometer and magnetometer readings, but I can't transmit seismic readings, I can't transmit, there's another one, gravity readings, yes, no. So once again, that's a really dumb move by me. And because of that, well, I probably lost out on a lot more science, especially those gravity readings. It's a new experiment that I picked up in the last episode, and it does provide us an awful lot of science. But we are now over at Jade, which is the final moon of Gateway, and it is the biggest by far. It is very, very, very large, and we are going to need about 2,500 meters per second of delta V, or thereabouts, possibly even more, to land this final probe. We can see that we are currently orbiting at 2,200 meters per second, so we're going to need more than that, and that's not even taking into account gravity losses. Yeah, from having a really poor burn down to the surface. So this was tight, despite having 3,500 meters per second of delta V. Well, I didn't really want to balk this up, so I was very, very, very cautious with my landing. Luckily, though, this time we do have communications, and we are within range of the Gateway 1 mission the entire time on the way down, so I was able to finally control our descent. And it's very fortunate that I did have fine control, because all of the scientific experiments on this are offset. When our fuel tanks are almost empty, it causes us to pitch off course, unless we have a very low throttle. So, because we almost used all of our fuel, if I would have blasted that full blast towards the end, then we would have gone spinning out of control. But we were able to land safely and nicely down on the surface of Jade, and because I haven't swapped out of this, we can communicate some data from the surface. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, not all of the data I'd like, because there isn't enough power on the probe. So with that, we get 1,700 science, which isn't actually anywhere near as much as I thought it would have been. I reckon we probably would have had about at least 3,500 if all of the experiments would have worked properly, which is a bit of a shame, but we picked up some new technology, including the technology to be able to freeze Kerbals, so hopefully we should be able to send them on interplanetary missions. But that will be in a future episode. Until then, I've been Carnasa, and I will see you later.